Greetings, everyone. Greetings. Good evening. Welcome to another dynamic program planned and produced by the Hanson SDA Church Youth Ministries. This evening, our topic is blood, sweat, and tears fighting for a seat at the table. Again, blood, sweat, and tears fighting for a seat at the table. And as always, we have brought some of the best minds to be on here. We have brought back Tim. We have brought back Natalie. And for the first time on here, we have Crystal. But you'll hear a little bit more about them as we move forward in the program. So here's what I want you to do. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go ahead. If you're on Facebook, hit that share button. Share this program on your news feed so that others who want to know what it means to sacrifice blood, sweat, and tears can tune into this program. If you're on YouTube, why don't you go ahead? 1, subscribe to our page. 2, we want you to like this video. Also, we want you to put that this link in your text box or maybe in your WhatsApp box and just share it to your friends. Maybe somebody out there needs to know what it feels like, needs to know what it means to sacrifice blood, sweat, and tears. So you could have never chosen a better way to spend your Saturday afternoon. Grab your friends, grab your family members, call everybody, tell them that we have a very dynamic, a very powerful program that's going to go down within this hour. So I'm going to invite you all to bow your heads and pray with me as we get ready to kick things off. Let us pray. Father, thank you so much for everyone who is currently on the different medias watching this program. And I pray for those who will be coming in, that they will truly be blessed. I pray that this program will be transformative. I thank you, Lord, for I know that you will hear and I know that you will answer this prayer. In Jesus' name we do pray. Amen. So once again, folks, welcome to another program put on by the Hanson Youth Ministries. This evening's focus, blood, sweat, and tears, a fight for a seat at the table. Now I'm going to begin with 2 or 4 guests that has been here before. I just want them to give us some updates as to how they're doing. And I want them to also answer this question for me. And I want you to answer the question as well. What have you ever sacrificed before? Have you ever had to make a sacrifice before? And what was that sacrifice that you had to make? I want you to go ahead and put it in the comment section while I introduce you and reintroduce some of the panelists here this evening. So I'll begin with Natalie for an update, how she's been, what she's been up to. Then I'll go to Tim, how he's been, what has he been up to. And then we're going to go to Crystal, who's here for the first time. And I'm going to ask especially when Crystal comes on, if you're on Facebook, just hit that love button. Just give her lots and lots and lots of love. We're happy that she is here. But I also want you to give Tim and Natalie love too, but I want Crystal to get some additional love because she's on for the first time. So, Natalie, talk to me. How have you been and what sacrifices have you made?
I've been good, just working from home like most of us are and trying to juggle home-life balance, which has been a little bit of a challenge. And just trying to try new things just to get my mind off of the craziness that is planet Earth. And gosh, that's such a hard question for me to answer. I know there's stuff I've sacrificed, but I can't think of anything right now. The most I can think of is sleep when my daughter was born and actually now, but that's the most I can think of at this moment.
Look, sleep is very important. That is a big thing to sacrifice. I'm telling you. I mean, every time I think about having another child and I think about the fact that the sleep factor, I'm like, man, you know what? I don't know. Thank you so much for sharing, Natalie. Tim, my brother, how you been, sir? How you been? What you been up to?
Pastor, I'm doing just fine. Thank you so much for asking, and thank you for having me here with you today. I'm blessed to be here with Natalie and with Crystal and with you to have this important conversation. I've been doing well. I have, like Natalie, been looking into a webcam 6 days a week, and even on the Sabbath day, I'm looking into a webcam. So It has been a challenge for me trying to do higher education through a webcam is not easy. It is almost impossible to teach philosophy through a webcam, which is what I teach. But I am halfway vaccinated, and I'll be fully vaccinated in a few weeks. And in the fall, here at Walla Walla University, we're expecting everything to return to normal in-person teaching. So I am looking forward to that day when I can walk into a classroom and actually go to work outside of my house. Mm-hmm. So in terms of a sacrifice that I've made, I guess a sacrifice is when you relinquish something that really matters to you for the sake of some greater good, right? Mm-hmm. And for me, the greatest sacrifice I've probably made thus far in my life. I don't have children, so I can't quite relate to the loss of sleep, although I think that is universal among most parents. For me, I guess the biggest sacrifice I've made was taking my current job at Walla Walla University. I took a huge pay cut to come here. It was a move that made absolutely no sense on paper, but it was something that I believe God called me to do. So I did it. And I think it was a pretty big sacrifice. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Sticking to it. Thank you so much for sharing. I am so tempted to push a little bit more, but not right now.
Okay.
I'm going to let it just rest right now. But I thank you so much for sharing. And let me just make a shameless plug. Folks, I can tell you, vaccination is a very personal thing. I cannot force anyone to take vaccination, but I just want you to know, if we think that if we just close our eyes tight enough that COVID is going to vanish, I strongly ask you to reconsider that logic. You must do whatever you can to keep yourself safe and to keep your family members safe. That's all I'm going to say on that. So thank you so much for sharing, Tim. Thank you so much for sharing, Natalie. And folks on YouTube and folks on Facebook, have you ever sacrificed anything before? And what was it? Please feel free. We have a wonderful, we are family here. We are family here. And I always want to hear from you. I don't only have 3 additional panelists here. You guys are my panelists as well. So I love when you talk. I love when you communicate back and forth with each other. So let's populate the comment section and let me know, have you ever made any sacrifice before, and what was it? So let me welcome now, for the first time here on the Hanson Place Youth Ministries platform, Crystal. Crystal, welcome. It's so good to have you. Why don't you tell the folks a little bit about yourself, give them a little bit of background, and then if you don't mind, just answer the question, have you ever made a sacrifice before, and what was the sacrifice that you made?
Hey everybody, my name is Crystal Williams. A little bit about myself. First, I want to say thank you for the invite again. A little background about myself is I attended Washington Adventist University with Natalie, and I studied history. Right now I'm teaching in Baltimore. I teach kindergartners in Baltimore and attending Johns Hopkins for University for Education. So that's what I'm doing right now. Also, I'm a Christian. That's what I should have started with. I'm a very proud follower of Christ. And first have you ever had to make a sacrifice? And once I heard that question, the first thing I thought about was my first sacrifice. Coming to this country, I felt like it was a sacrifice. I was born in Jamaica, and it's just like, you ask yourself, who gives up paradise? And to me, Jamaica was a paradise. And having to give it up to come to America, and everybody come here in the search of a better life. And I thought I had the greatest life, so it was a sacrifice to me. So that was my first sacrifice, and still something that I still think about.
Thank you so much for sharing, Crystal. And once again, welcome on this platform. We are happy to have you. I share that with you. I tell people all the time, I'm from Jamaica as well. And Woohoo! And I mean, many persons will see, moving from Jamaica as an opportunity to say, yes, I've gotten out. But to be honest with you, for many years, I battled with the concept of leaving my home to come here. It took years for me to fully kind of accepted the fact that this is where I'm at. So not everybody, folks, not everybody is looking to jump ship. Not everybody's looking to jump ship. Somebody told me in a former job I used to have, sometimes we think the grass is green on the other side, but we get over there and realize it's not real grass. So the grass is not always greener on the other side. Which, talking about grass and talking about, making a better life. Let me ask you all something. I'm going to start off on a very basic level, because I want folks to understand. Sometimes we jump into discussions, but I want folks to begin by really thinking about their lives and thinking about where they're going with their lives. And I want to ask each of you seem to have received and have accomplished certain things in life. So let me ask you, can you have success without sacrifice? Why or why not? Let's begin there. Can there be success without sacrifice? Who wants to go first? Or y'all want me to choose who go first? Crystal, talk to me.
I figured I'll start it off since I'm new. I would say no. I don't believe that in the ideal world, if I'm talking about a utopian world, maybe there could be a sacrifice with to have success. But if I'm also aligning it with the life of Christ, even Christ had to sacrifice his life for the success of me having salvation, right? So if I'm looking at that aspect, I would say sacrifice. I believe that sacrifice is a mandatory thing for success. And that's how I would.
Thank you so much for sharing, Crystal. Ella Jean said she's a mother of 3 and a wife. Life is, she says, a sacrifice. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Ella. And we want to hear from more of you. Have you ever sacrificed anything? And what was it? What did you have to sacrifice to get where you need to be? Tim, talk to me. You're sandwiched between these two ladies. Can you have success without sacrifice? Why or why not?
No, I have to agree with Crystal, and I would just echo her commentary by saying that we live, I mean, it's almost a law of nature that to choose one thing is not to choose something else, right? Such that if, for example, take the great athletes and the high achievers that we admire so much. If you look at Black woman athletes and you look at someone the status of a Serena Williams, for example, Serena Williams will tell you that she, throughout her life, has had to sacrifice many other things that she would have preferred to have done for the sake of training to become the best tennis player in the world, right? If you study the life of Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan or any great athlete, and it's not just in athletics, right? If it's law, if it's medicine, if it's whatever your field of endeavor is, when you decide that you're going to do something and do it well, you are necessarily excluding other possibilities that may be things that you would want to do, but that you will not be able to do because you just can't do two things at the same time in that way. That's not to say that you can't be successful in multiple ways, but I think success by its very nature entails sacrifice. I think to say that you were successful and that you didn't sacrifice is almost to utter a contradiction in terms. I think the two are linked together almost conceptually. So I would agree with Crystal.
Thank you so much, Tim. And I have a follow-up question for you. But once again, I just would like to welcome everyone to the Hanson Place Youth Ministries program this evening. The title that we're talking about is Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Right now, we're just laying the foundation because we're going to get into some muddy waters. But right now, we're just laying the foundation. If you haven't done so, I'm asking you to please share this on your news feed. If you're on Facebook, if you're on WhatsApp, if you're on YouTube, I'm sorry, you can put this in your text or put this in your WhatsApp, put the link, share the link so that others can know that we're talking about a very serious topic, a very relevant topic, a topic that's needed in 2021, blood, sweat, and tears. Tim, and before I go to you, Tim, folks out there on YouTube, folks out there on Facebook, what say you? Can you have success without sacrifice? I want to hear from you. What are your points of view? What do you think? What do you believe? Can there be success without sacrifice? I want to hear from you. Tim, yes. Now you said something which to me, it struck me. You took a pay cut to go somewhere that you believe that God was sending you. Now, for some people looking at you, they'll say, Tim, you're crazy. You have made the wrong decision. You have given up money. You had a nice job. You were getting a nice pay. Why on earth? And you don't have to get into your business, but why on earth would somebody take a pay cut to go work for less? I thought that the whole purpose of working was to elevate oneself, get more and more money. Why would somebody take a pay cut?
Well, I think there's a difference between a career and a vocation, right? I think as spiritual people, as Crystal identified herself as a believer in Christ, right? You tend to identify with this notion of sacrifice. There's a sense in which you realize that your life is, although you live your life, there's a sense in which your life is not your own, right? Your life is a gift from God, and what you do with it is your gift back to Him. And we are stewards of our lives. We're stewards of the very breath that's in our lungs. And stewardship is really the difference between possession and ownership, right? Possessing something does not mean you own it. To all of the parents out there, I'm sure you remind your children of that if they are of driving age every time they take the car, right? Your children will go out maybe with their friends on a Saturday night, and you will be careful to remind them that just because you possess the car does not mean you own it, right? You're still answerable to me as the owner. And I think that is the kind of disposition and orientation and posture that I try to take toward my own life. That while it is I who am living it, there is a God who governs my life and who I want to allow to govern my life, such that when He speaks, He may send me in a direction that's terribly uncomfortable, as this move was for me, but that I nevertheless have to do it. So for me, I think a certain God consciousness, a certain awareness of something much bigger than myself is what I can only speak for myself, but that's what sort of pushed me in the direction of sacrifice, because I understand that my life is not really my own. And even within the parameters of the sacrifice that I've made, in His grace and mercy, God still gives me a broad range, a vast range of acceptable ways in which I can express my uniqueness and my individuality and be who He has called me to be and enjoy that. But I still feel the pain of living in Walla Walla from time to time. But hey, it's all in the name of sacrifice. I should say that there are also different kinds of sacrifice. Sacrifice can have levels to it, but I'm sure we'll get to that a little bit later.
We're going to get into it.
Yeah.
We're going to get into it.
Thank you, Pastor.
No, thank you so much for sharing, Tim. And I hope you heard what Tim said. He said his life, there's a bigger picture, there's a bigger meaning to his life. So he's not just looking at dollars and cents. He sees himself as someone who is a steward. God has given him life. God has given him his body, and he's a steward. He's supposed to take care of it, and he's following the leading of God. Again, we're just laying the foundation for where we're going this evening. Natalie, talk to me. Can there be success without sacrifice? Why or why not?
I think first we need to define what success is, because success to me looks very different to success to somebody else. That's kind of where like I got stuck. I'm like, I'm like, what is success? What does it mean to be successful? But I would have to agree with what Tim and what Chris said. When we understand success, we understand that it's going to cost you something. Nothing in life is free, right? So that's kind of where I was at. I was just thinking about like, well, what does success mean? Because for me, success means da 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 da. For somebody else, it means something else. So that's for me. That's where I kind of got hung up. It's like, okay, well, what does success mean? And like Tim said, there's different levels, right, of sacrifice, and I'm guessing that there's also different levels of success as well.
Fair enough. Let's get specific. I want y'all to come with me now to 1972. And I want you to, as a matter of fact, we're going to go a little bit even before 1972. I want you to come with me in the life of this lady, Shirley Chisholm. And my producers, if you can get that picture up on the screen so that we can get where we need to go this evening. Once again, I want to welcome all of you to Hanson Place Youth Ministries under this topic that we're talking about tonight: blood, sweat, and tears. A fight to have a place at a seat at the table. And I want to talk to you about Shirley Chisholm. Now, I received this information from www.womenshistory.org, and it says that this lady, Shirley Chisholm, she was born right here. Well, where I am. Well, I'm in Queens, but she was born in Brooklyn, New York. So woo-hoo to all our New York folks. She was born in Brooklyn, New York, and she was the daughter of immigrants. Her parents, one of her parents was from Guyana, and the other was from Barbados. So if you're from Guyana or Barbados, woo-hoo, a shout out to you. As a matter of fact, if you're from Guyana or Barbados, I want you to put it in the comments section. Let's give your island some love. If you're from Guyana or Barbados, go ahead and put it there in the section. Now, so from the get-go, she had a passion for political science. She had a passion for politics, for working civil service, for working on behalf of the people. And it says that her professor encouraged her to consider a political career, but she said that she was resistant to it. And here's why. She said, the article said this, quote, "She faced a double handicap as both Black and female." So she was resistant to go into the field because she was Black, one, and she was female. So she said, look, I have two strikes against me. However, you see, when you're passionate about something, somehow your passion will lead you to where you're going one way or the other. So, but she ended up going in. She just couldn't help herself. So she ended up working for the community. She was the second African-American in the New York State legislature in 1964. She was the first African-American woman in Congress in 1968. Now this lady decided to do something that seemed that some people would say is absolutely crazy. Remember, she had said there are two strikes against her. One, she was a woman. Two, she was Black. And I want to add a third one. Three, she was the daughter of immigrants. She decided that she was going to run in 1972 as the Democratic Party presidential nomination. She wanted to be the presidential nominee. And so she decided to run for that. Now, I want to be clear. This lady faced extreme opposition. And you can go to the website, www.womenshistory.org, to read about her. but they even blocked her from speaking on the TV to bring her address. They blocked her, and they end up giving her just one opportunity to present, to come on TV. Now, of course, she didn't become the president of the United States. So let me ask you. I want to go to Crystal. Crystal, you're a history major. Around 1972. I'll begin with you, and then Tim, you can jump in. Natalie, if you want to add anything else, you can add it. Around 1972, was that a wise decision for Shirley Chisholm to put herself out there to make the sacrifice to say, look, I want to run as a presidential nominee? Was she being presumptuous? Should she just have sat in her corner and be comfortable where she was? Was the decision worth it? Was it, let me not say worth it, was it a sensible decision? Crystal, talk to me.
So as pertains to sensible and time period, I would say maybe not, right? That's just like the reality, is that maybe it's not sensible, because most of the time we see even in the the civil rights movement, we see women having to take the background, and men have to lead in those positions. And we hadn't seen a black man running for president. So is it sensible? I would say not. Was it necessary? I would say yes, because in 1965 we see the Voting Rights Act, where states are having to no longer be discriminated against, like the color, who gets to vote, not just white men or white women or black men, but everybody is now being protected by, let's say, that's the ideal, is that they're being protected to go in and vote. So it might not have been sensible, right? But it was necessary, because once we see Ms. Chisholm starting to take that step into Congress, into even state assemblies, we see now other women starting to come. So it might not have been sensible, but it was necessary for somebody to just to jumpstart it. Because after that, we see Reagan is appointing the first female judge on the Supreme Court. We see Sandra Day O'Connor, and then we see RBG getting put. It set off a trend in that, okay, the door is wide open. The door is open. It might not be wide open, but it's like, it's a little open, and whoever wants to come in now. And you see a lot of women, white women, black women, but a lot of women are coming in now and stepping, and I believe that Shirley Chisholm started that, in that they are now able to look at it and say, I'm not so afraid to do this. I'm not so afraid to step out of the household and into places that was deemed not for me. And I think even it's not, like I said, it's not sensible, but it had to start somewhere. And I think that's why it was very necessary for her to do that. So I would say that on that point.
I mean, Crystal, thank you so much. I hear you. It wasn't sensible, but it was necessary. John James said it was groundbreaking, and the sensibility of it was futuristic and long-sighted. Thank you so much for John. Thank you so much, John, for that. I want to hear from the rest of you. Do you think it was a sensible decision for her to make that bold step to say, you know what, I am going to run. I want to be president of the United States of America. What say you? Tim, come on in, brother. Let me hear your point of view. What say you regarding this sacrifice that Shirley Chisholm decided to make?
Sure. Well, I think as a historical matter, it's important to make a couple of clarifications here. African Americans were emancipated on January 1st, 1863. And from 1863 until 1877, there was a strong presence of Union troops in the Deep South. During this 14-year period, African-American newly freed slaves, Black men and Black women, began to enjoy some social and political success. They were being elected to state offices throughout the South and so forth. But then, because of the Hayes-Tilden Compromise in 1877, Rutherford B. Hayes, when he became president, withdrew the Union troops from the South. As soon as this happened, this initiated a reign of terror against Black people that lasted all the way from 1877 until 1965 and was reinstituted again in 2013 when the Supreme Court of the United States gutted the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So now, today, 151 years after the ratification of the 15th Amendment that guaranteed the right to vote, we are still looking at states with a history of racial discrimination in their voting practices, like Georgia, that are passing laws that we now call voter suppression laws, right? Now, it's fascinating because when you look at the gender dynamic in the Black community, immediately following abolition, lots of white women who argued for abolition were arguing that African-American men should not get the right to vote because they were brutes and savages who were ultimately a threat to the purity of white womanhood. So when the 19th Amendment came into law in 1920, when it was ratified, that was for white women. Black women did not have the right to vote, and Black men certainly did not have the right to vote, particularly in southern states. Medgar Evers lost his life for that reason. What is significant about Shirley Chisholm is that in just 7 years after the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, this Black woman, a trailblazer, a phenomenal trailblazer, decides that she is going to audaciously run for president. You know, Dr. King once spoke about how it is never the right time to do the right thing in a world that is headed in the wrong direction. And I don't know if it's ever sensible. I don't know if it would ever be considered sensible for Shirley Chisholm to do what she did, but it certainly was in some sense, it was a sacrificial act of courage. It was an act in which she knew she would probably not be successful, but her achievement was not in what the significance of her action in running for president was not in what she achieved, but in what she attempted. She took her status as a Black woman and put it on the line and really paved the way for, because it would be another 12 years before there would be a serious candidate in Jesse Jackson for the Democratic nomination in 1984, right? And so I think Shirley Chisholm was no doubt a trailblazer. I don't think her candidacy for president made sense, but I think she was certainly blazing a trail, not just for women, but also for Black people. Mm-hmm. Her political leadership paved the way in some sense for Jesse Jackson and for Barack Obama, who would be a contender and ultimately become president. I should say, I would be remiss if I didn't say this. One of the highlights of my life is that when I was a college junior in 1989, Shirley Chisholm spoke on my campus, and I met her, shook her hand, and talked with her in a reception afterwards. It was something to stand in the presence of her greatness. Mm-hmm. She was a phenomenal woman, a phenomenal Black woman, a phenomenal hero, a phenomenal American, and I will go to my grave smiling because of the fact that I had the opportunity to meet her in person. So what a great woman.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that, Tim. And I still want to hear from more of you. You've heard Tim. You have heard Crystal. Talk to me. What do you think about this decision that she has made? Do you agree with Tim? Do you agree with Crystal? What say you? What say you about the decision that Shirley Chisholm made in that time to run to be president of the United States of America? One, Black; two, woman; and I had the third one, daughter of immigrant parents. Where did she find the audacity to decide that she gonna run to be the president of the United States of America? Natalie, you don't have the historical background as Tim or as Crystal. You're just looking from the regular lens, so to speak, as what I am looking at this from. What do you think from your standpoint? Was it sensible? And I'm going to add a part to this now based upon what you echoed and Tim had echoed as well. Was she a success or was she a failure?
So I wish I remembered this quote, but I can't remember it. But it goes something along the lines of like good women rarely make history. People who are considered to be good, right, following all the rules, rarely make history. So it was necessary. What Jesus did was necessary, and it was in that time considered to be like, oh my goodness, blasphemy. But he came to do what he set out, and it was interesting. I'm pretty sure Shirley Chisholm went into it knowing that she wasn't going to win, but she went into it knowing that other people like Karis, my daughter, is going to be watching her one day and say, yes, I can do this. And it reminded me of something called, Psych 101. You learn about different branches of psychology, and one of them is social psychology. Very interesting. And there's something called foot in the door phenomenon, right? And there's another one called door in the face phenomenon. So I'm going to read it really quickly just to make sure like I don't get it messed up. So it's, and I'll explain it to you. It's a compliance method, the door in the face phenomenon, commonly studied in social psychology. The persuader attempts to convince the respondent to comply by making a large request that the respondent will likely turn down. So basically, right, let's say, for example, let's say I want to order a couple of things on Amazon, right? And I tell Corey, I'm like, hey, honey, in my mind, I want to spend $50. But I tell him, honey, can I spend $100? He's going to tell me no, right? My intent was never for the $100. My intent was the $50. So now I go to him again and I say, well, can I use $50 then? $50 is less than $100. Of course, sure you can, right? So when I think of people, the people before me, the people who I look back to, right? I think of that. They probably knew that they weren't going to get very far. But what they did is that they understood, right? They understood that I am just as human as you are. And these are my rights. And if even if it doesn't go anywhere, at least it'll be documented somewhere. At least somebody will know that I did something, right? So now, like Tim said, she opened the door for so many other people. Yes, the door got slapped in her face, but now it's written in the annals of time that this woman stepped in there and opened the door for now people like me.
And you see, the reason why I asked a question is because, see, the points that were made earlier, you have to know how to measure success. You see, somebody could look at her and say, oh, she was a complete failure. She didn't get anywhere. But as all of you brought out, she made some progressive steps. She made bold moves as an African American, and even more so, a woman. She decided to step out and crack that door. And Amanda said that's powerful. That's powerful. Door in the face phenomenon. Now, let me ask you something, because there are people here watching, and I want to make sure that folks understand. Well, let me just ask the question. This tenacity, this boldness, this push to overcome and do something unique and do something special, are people born with this, or is it just a selected few that has this type of tenacity in them to push beyond the boundaries of life? Who wants to take a stab at it? And then I'll tell you why I'm asking that question. Is it innate? Was Shirley Chisholm born with this fight in her? Is it genetics? Talk to me.
I don't think that it has to be an either or. I think it can be, but I think in many instances, particularly in Black culture in America, at least, this tenacity is often acquired. It's often acquired through experience. It's often acquired through the necessity of living in a world that's fundamentally hostile to your humanity. In philosophy, we use a Latin term called I'll put it in the chat if I can. If I can figure out how to do that here, I don't know if I can, but it's called the conatus ascendi. Conatus is the first word, and the second word is essendi. The conatus ascendi, and it basically is the Latin term that means the will to live, right? The will to survive. You ever try to swat a fly, right? It's trying to live. One of the problems we have with the coronavirus are the genetic mutations, the variants. You know why? Because as dangerous as it is, it's a living organism. So it strives to maintain its life. So it adapts genetically to circumstances that are hostile to it. We hope it's unsuccessful, especially as it relates to vaccinations. But nonetheless, there's a drive and a will to live. And I think this conatus ascendi, this will to live, this desire to move on and push forward, is something that is innate, but it can be socially and culturally induced. And I think when you take someone like Shirley Chisholm, who sees the world and is living through the civil rights struggle, is seeing the role of politics in shaping public policy, and she sees how things can be better, her innate will to live becomes an overwhelming tenacity to get involved in politics that translates into an audacity to say, I'm running for president. So I think this thing is, it can be innate. Some people may have more of a innate desire based on personality. I'm not a psychologist, so I can't speak to that, but maybe there are personality differences in which this trait is more pronounced. So you might be born with a certain degree of it, but I also think it can be acquired. And I think for lots of people in African American life, at least in the United States, it certainly can be an acquired trait. So I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you so much. And we're going to get to the psychologist, because she right here, Natalie's here. But Crystal, I want to hear from you. What do you think? Is this something that only a selected few of people have this audacity to press this system, or is it that everyone has can do what Shirley Chisholm aspired to do?
I think there are pieces of Tim's point that I agree with. And I would say this to that point is that we might all be born with it, but I think just like what Tim said, or like, that Natalie might touch on this, like nature versus nurture, in a sense that how is my surrounding cultivating my behavior towards things? If my surrounding sees a barrier up, is it telling me to jump over it, or is it telling me to stop, right? And I think that's the difference in am I then being nurtured to overcome my obstacles, right? And I think for most of us, both our nature and our nurture, like Tim said, especially in Black culture, is telling us uh, find a way to get over, right? But for some people, their nurture might be telling them, which, and when I say nurture, I'm like, who the people that are raising me, the people are instilling my beliefs, and not necessarily my whole society per se. Is it telling me uh to stop? This is where you stop right here, right? When you see a barrier, you stop, you go no further. But if my parents, my church, my school, my community is telling me, if I see a barrier, find a ladder, climb over, get the build steps to get over it, and find a way to overcome, right? And I think that's where then it's developed. It's no longer necessarily I'm born with it. I might be born with it, but am I using what I'm born with? Am I developing those crafts to get me over obstacles? And I think that when it comes to Shirley Chisholm, there might we know, and then this is not to say biases. My parents are Caribbean immigrants. I am a Caribbean immigrant, so I know that there's things that I've been taught to, like, there's no stopping. There's a lot of push through every obstacle you push through. So what if those are the same nurture that she was being raised with, right? And I think that that's a lot, because I know, like, based on her father loves politics. So that's one of the reasons why she also went to politics, because they have those conversations at home. So I then would believe that just running for any congresswoman, running for a state assembly, running for presidency might just seem like something instilled at home that said, I also can do this. And I think that's where it comes with the development now, and not just only being born with it, because you're born with a lot of things and you don't use it. And I think that's what I would say on that point.
Crystal, I do thank you so much. As a matter of fact, based upon what Crystal said, I want to throw a question out there to you, family on Facebook and YouTube. I want to ask you, in your nurturing, in your upbringing, were you taught to push against the odds? Were you taught to fight for your rights and to not give up until you get what you're fighting for? What have you been nurtured to do? Go ahead and put it in the comment section. Have you been nurtured to be a fighter? I want to hear from you. Please go ahead and put it in the comment section. And let me just see here if I can touch on some of the answers from the previous question. Amanda said, I think everyone is born with it, but everyone does not act on it or cultivate it. Let me see what Ella Jean says. It takes time and a change of society to really measure success. At the time she's going back. Ella's going back to the previous question. At the time she did ran for president, but she was ridiculed and dismissed. I was too young to remember her, but I remember hearing people talk about her as I was growing up. It's only recently that I hear her being really recognized and praised for her efforts. I am proud every time I drive by the state park named after her on the Belt Parkway. Thank you so much for sharing that, Ella. Now, Natalie, I know you study the mind, you study behavior. Why is it that we're not seeing this? Bothers me. This bothers me because, and I'm going to tell you what is bothering me. It bothers me because it seems like it takes something drastic to happen for us to make a move, for you to see a collective amount of people making a move for change. To me, it seems like as long as, you know, even the injustice is there, all this stuff is there, we kind of just relax in it. As long as it's not close to us, it doesn't seem to impact our family. It seems like we just ease on as a large community and just go through and just put up with whatever it is. But it seems like it's when something drastic, as a police officer putting his knee on George Floyd's neck and killing him, it seems like it takes those drastic things for people to rise up and say, you know what, something needs to be done. So why is it that we're not seeing more people with this tenacity to make a change in society?
That's a very hard question to answer. One of the first things that they teach you when you go to school for social work or psychology is it's a soft science as opposed to something like chemistry or biology. And it's soft because, like economics, right? You can only make predictions based on your observations, right? So I can't sit here and say like person's going to do X, Y, and Z based on my observations, because humans are as much as they are very predictable, they can be very unpredictable. So that is a very hard question to answer, but I really got to go back to what Crystal said. She took it right out of my mouth. Nature versus nurture, right? So basically that debate is, are people a product of their environments or are they born with it? And that's very hard to tell, right? Because we understand that social constructs and the family that you grew up with, even down to the place where you grew up in, has such a big impact in who you are and how you develop as a person. But we also understand that some people are just born with certain types of talents or certain types of inclinations, right? So Crystal will tell you, I'm a very quiet person, laid back, not in your face. And my daughter, I birthed her. She is very loud. She will say no. And I'm more like, oh, it's okay. A little more passive. I don't know where she possibly got that from, because I'm not like that. I'm not even like that at home, but that's the way that she is. But in our home, we're trying to raise her a certain way. So we're trying to teach her how to love Christ and stuff like that. So the chances of her becoming a Christian as opposed to becoming a Buddhist are probably tipped. Does that make sense? Right? At the end of the day, she gets to decide who she wants to be or what she wants to do. But this is what we're instilling her. So in her current environment at home, this is what we're teaching her. This is what we're instilling in her. She gets to decide. Chances are she's probably, and I'm praying, she probably might lean towards Christianity, or she might have these notions already, even down in her behavior, right? So that's why it's so hard to answer that type of question. But again, when you said that, I thought of, if you ever have time, look up the bystander effect and look up the case of, I think her name was Katie Genovese. So quick story, basically homegirl was walking home from work, late at night, some guy comes and I think he stabs her and rapes her, or he stabs her. I can't really remember. But basically, a lot of people in the neighborhood heard her screaming, but they didn't call the police because in their minds, they said somebody else is going to take care of it, right? It's kind of like the opposite of the Good Samaritan, right? The Good Samaritan, somebody saw somebody was in danger, bam, they helped them out. No, in the bystander effect, you're thinking that somebody else is going to do something, or you're thinking, this is not my fight. My parents came from Dominican Republic. A lot of times they would tell us, don't act like them. Talking about Black people. Don't be like them. That's not, duck your head. If the police tells you to do, you do exactly what the police tells you to do. They're the authority, right? So it all comes down to like your culture, how you're brought up. There's so many factors that can play into it. It's very hard to determine why or whether or not a person's going to do what they're going to do.
It's true. It's a complicated question. Thank you so much, my panelists. You guys are awesome. And I want to thank you all, those who are commenting. Still want to hear from some of you. I know some of you have been really quiet. You guys are quiet today. But I want to hear from you. And also, if you have any questions for the panelists, go ahead and drop it in the comment section. And we'll see if we can get to it. Once again, welcome. I want to welcome everyone who probably, if you just joined, to another program sponsored by the Hanson Place Youth Ministries. Tonight, we're talking under the topic blood, sweat, and tears. Now, let's move to another lady, powerful, in the news, currently in power, Kamala Harris, the vice president of the United States of America. We know that she first ran. She was running to be the on the Democratic Party to be the presidential ticket. That wasn't successful. Joe Biden won that, and then he recruited. I don't know if that's the correct word, or selected her to be his vice president. She accepted, and here she is now. What are the similarities between her and Shirley Chisholm? So similar. So let's first get the difference out of the way. The difference is that, well, similarity. Both of them ran on the presidential ticket. Both of them did not end up becoming the president of the United States. However, Kamala made it a step closer than Shirley, where now she's a vice president of the United States of America. Now, what additional similarities do we see? We saw that the difference was that she made it a little bit closer than what Shirley Chisholm did. Shirley Chisholm cracked the door. She was able to push herself halfway through. Both of them came from immigrant parents. Kamala's dad is Jamaican, and her mom was Asian / some people say Indian, but Asian descent. She was the first African American attorney general in California, and when she took office in 2017, Harris became, and this is coming from Britannica.org, became the first Indian American woman in the Senate and just the second Black woman. So we here we find two women coming from similar backgrounds. One cracked the door, the other was able to push herself halfway through. My question for you panelists is this, and then I'm going to ask a controversial question, and then we're going to work on landing this plane. Has there been, and I want you to listen now to the key word that I'm going to ask, has there been significant changes regarding to African American women between the time of Shirley Chisholm to now with Kamala Harris? Has there been significant changes? And if yes, what were they? Crystal, let me begin with you. Tim, jump in after Crystal. And then Natalie, if you want to jump in, you can jump in, because I have another important question. If you want to hold off and wait for the other question, that's fine. But let me start with you, Crystal, and then go to Tim.
Can you restate the question just so I get it?
Okay. Has there been significant changes for African American women since the time of Shirley Chisholm to now 2021 with Kamala Harris?
Okay, let me see. I would say this is a tough question. I've been battling this since even her nomination. Natalie knows me. I'm a very battler of the norm. I would say yes, in the sense of, and I'm saying yes only because she's able to get in. I'm saying yes on that basis alone. I'm saying yes because the number of African American in the Senate, in the House, on Congress, in like the House of Reps, right? I'm saying yes on that basis, right? But I think when if I'm really looking at the picture, there's a lot of differences when we look at a political aspect and the need for the popular vote, right? In the sense that in this time, Black women are no longer taking that back seat. We're taking the initiative, right? And they're like, okay, I'm looking around, I'm waiting, which in a sense is the same thing that Shirley Chisholm did. And like, who is going to stand up for my community? Who is going to stand up? I will stand up, right? And I think right now we see a lot of it, like Stacey Abrams, right? We see a lot of Black women no longer waiting. And I think that is the change, is in that, not that the political aspect is waiting for us to move, not or wanting us to act, or it's just not that society is saying we can act. It's just like we are no longer waiting for permission. We're no longer waiting for the black man and then this is not to discount black men. This is just to like, we're no longer waiting for your say so. We're no longer waiting for society to say, yes, we have a black man, we have a white woman, it's your turn now. We're no longer waiting. Black women are now saying, nobody else. And I've been cultivating other people to move. If we're looking at Shirley Chisholm and we're looking at Camilla, Shirley Chisholm has ran campaign for Democratic candidates um, for 10 years before she ran herself, right? So we're saying that, oh, I can do this. And I think that's the thing that Camilla, that's that bravery in that, oh, I'm not running for the lower level anything anymore. I'm taking this step to go for what I want. What I want is presidency. Yes, she didn't make it completely there, but it's I would speak I would say it's no longer being patient. Black women, and that's the difference that we're seeing now, is that we're no longer patient to wait for anybody's go ahead. We're no longer, like I said, waiting for permission. We're going for it because in the rule of the land that we live in says that all of us are equal, and only criteria I needed to be born in this country, be of a certain age, and like, all these criteria. She's checking. I am this criteria, so then I can do it. No one should be able to stop me. So I think that's what we're seeing playing out. Is that like that's
Thank you. Thank you so much, Crystal, for sharing. And as you talk, the phrase, or the Natalie, what's that thing that you talk about? Just keep coming into my mind. She didn't get the one tried for the $100.
The door face phenomenon.
Yes. Shirley tried for the $100. She got like $10. Kamala tried for the 100. I would say she's probably got $80. I'm praying that the next woman who tries will get the $100. Tim, has there been significant changes in the treatment, the attitude towards African American women from the time of Shirley Chisholm to now?
I'll try to make my answer a lot less complex than I think your question is, because your phraseology is interesting. Significant changes. Change is neutral. Change could mean things got worse, and change could also mean things got better.
Well, let me qualify it. Changes for the better. Let's go.
Oh, okay. So, okay, good. So, have there been changes for the better?
Significant.
Well, significant. Well, I would say yes and no, right? Yes, obviously, we have a Black woman vice president of the United States, which is historic. It's an achievement. But we have a Black woman congressman, a Black congresswoman in Georgia, in a Georgia legislator, who's taken away in handcuffs and charged with felonies because she knocked on the governor's door and wanted to just watch the governor sign the voting bill into law. So it's almost, I feel like the opening of Tale of Two Cities by Dickens, right? It's the best of times, Kamala Harris. It's the worst of times when we see what's happening in Georgia, and we see a Black woman, an angry white mob can storm the Capitol in the pursuit of a lie and be violently rebellious, but a duly elected Black woman state representative in Georgia can't knock on the governor's door in the interest of nonviolent protest in pursuit of the truth. So it is the best of times and the worst of times. I think that the road to Kamala Harris from Shirley Chisholm in terms of change as improvement is really quite complicated, right? Because you can obviously say that there is no Kamala Harris without Shirley Chisholm, but in a sense, there is no Kamala Harris really without Condoleezza Rice either, right? Another highly accomplished Black woman who became a significant political operative, whatever you may think of her politics, right? You may disagree with her politics completely, but I don't think anyone can gainsay her qualifications. Doctorate in international relations, former Secretary of State, provost of Stanford University, and clearly when we talk about having a seat at the table, right? Condoleezza Rice was a major player in U.S. foreign policy. Now, we can debate that policy all we want, and we can talk about that all we want. But you have Condoleezza Rice, you have Hillary Clinton, right? Who runs for president, right? And again, we can debate the political side of things all we want, but we have a lot of names there. I don't think there would be a Kamala Harris if Barack Obama had never been elected president. And I don't think Barack Obama would have never been elected president if you didn't have Jesse Jackson, and you wouldn't have Jesse Jackson if you didn't have Shirley Chisholm, right? So there's again, the road from Chisholm to Harris is a winding road that takes detours in political ideology. It takes detours with race. Hillary Clinton is white, a white woman, and it takes detours with gender because you have a couple of African American men that are making the way. So helping to normalize the sight of Black faces in American politics at the national level, right? It just became something normal to see. It's becoming more normal to see Black faces in these high profile positions. So in that sense, I think there has been significant change for the better. But I also think, and I'm sure we'll maybe get to this a little bit later. I think there's some real tensions between race and gender, particularly as it relates to feminism. Feminism, it has certain origins in the suffrage movement, which was openly hostile to Black men. And some of feminist theory is based largely on racist assumptions and anti-misandric assumptions on misandric assumptions, anti-Black misandric assumptions about men, about Black men. So there's some complications there. Maybe we'll get to discuss those in a little bit, but I would say, have things changed for the better? Yes. Are we any less racist as a country? No. So I think it's the best of times and the worst of times.
Thank you so much, Tim. Crystal, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I wanted to add something real quick because I know when you first asked the question, I think sometimes, and this is not just to say anything to Tim's point, I think sometimes when we're talking about trajectory between two women, we can find a way to make it stay between those women. I get that we are talking about a Black woman, so sometimes we feel that urgency to bring up Black men, but I don't think we have to. It's necessary in a sense to say all those would have happened without without this black man, this black man, this white woman, this white woman. I'm not saying their part wasn't necessary. I'm just saying the question asks us about two black women, and to take away from those actions, I feel like it's kind of like, a robbery. That's what I'm pointing out when Tim was mentioning like all those other black men. I'm not saying that they didn't do uh, their part. I'm just saying that's not what the question was asking us. And I find that sometimes when we have these discussions, we try to find a way to highlight other things where we can just focus on that point, and just like these women made great accomplishment, and it be that.
Tim, you want to
I
respond?
just if I could just push back on that a little bit. No group of people exists in a vacuum.
And I'm not.
Black men don't exist in a vacuum, and black women don't exist in a vacuum. If the question is asking if there's been progress between 1972 and 2021, it would not be. It would be irresponsible to exclude from that discussion people who are integral to Kamala Harris's political success. And some of those people happen to be men, and some of them happen to be black men. Listen, black men and black women have historically existed together in community. And that is a part of this discussion. So I don't think it's appropriate to act as though Shirley Chisholm exists in isolation and Kamala Harris exists in isolation. So we're just going to talk about these two. I don't think that's possible.
I think it is. I think it is. I think it is mandatory for us to talk about them without making it seem like uh um without it making it seem like we have to interject everybody else. And I'm not saying people weren't there on the journey. I'm just saying we could just compare their lives and how they link up, and how they're following the same kind of patterns, and how who, like his original question asked, did one get farther than the other? What are the similarities and differences? I think there's ways we can do it.
I don't. I disagree. I don't want to belabor the point.
I'm just making a point that when we talk about you know what? Let me stop, because then I'm gonna turn it into. Go ahead, Pastor.
What say you, Facebook and YouTube family? Are you more on the line of Tim, or are you more on the line of Crystal? Talk to me. Right. Well, Ella Jean said, right, these two women had to fight the dual fight of race and gender biases, so the work and the success of both groups played a role in their success. Anybody else? What line are you thinking on? You thinking on the lines of Crystal that says, listen, we just focus on these two women? Or are you thinking more on the lines of Tim, who says, you know what, this is more of a communal fight. We have to interject where others have played a role? Let me know. See, for me, I know folks have different points of views. That's exactly why we have a panel and not me just up here preaching, so we can get different perspectives from different persons. So what say you, community? Who's thinking are you on? Are you on the line of Tim? We're more for communal. Or you in the line of Crystal says, you know what, just focus on these two? Servina Lavelle says Tim is correct. John James says it's all inclusive. Ella Jean says, I agree with Tim. Anybody else? Chime in. Let's see where you stand on this. Can we do it isolation, or do we have to bring it together, or we have to bring the community together? All right. Rod Trey says, I agree with Tim. All right.
And I'm not saying Tim isn't like, I'm not saying that I don't get Tim's point. I'm saying that there's ways we can talk about Black women just in the same way we talk about Black men, without attaching Black women to it, because a lot of people do that. They talk about Black men without attaching the work of Black women, and I think that sometimes that's where we need to we can do it on the flip as well. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying Tim didn't make correct points. I'm just saying there's ways to do it.
All right, Crystal. I listen. I thank you. I thank you so much. I appreciate every single opinion here on this program. So thank you so much for your points. Well received. I am debating. It's you know what? It's 5:18. I should now audience. I have another question to ask. I don't know if it might uh if I should based upon the time. What do you guys say? Should I ask it or should I not? Should I ask it or should I not? If you say no, then I'll skip it and I'll go to the final question for the evening. I'll skip that one and we will close. What say you? I want to vote yes to ask a question or no not to ask a question. I'm giving it 20 seconds. After 20 seconds, if I don't hear anything, I am just simply going to skip it, go to the final question, and then we wrap up. Should I ask it? I have two ask. Anybody else? Should I ask it? Should I ask the question? Should I ask the question? 10 more seconds. Should I ask it? Should I ask the question? Now, well, I got two. Let me go ahead and ask it. So, folks, we're aiming at 5:30 to end. Now, this question might seem petty. It might even seem foolish to ask, but it's arguments that I've heard, and so therefore I have to bring it up. I've heard some people say that the reason why certain Black folks are able to reach as far as they did is because of their skin tone. And I've heard some people say America is not ready to receive a person who's darker skinned to be president or to be vice president. Here's my question now. Do you guys feel, based upon what we have seen through Shirley, using the example Shirley Chisholm, Kamala Harris, I'll even go with on step out and push towards even Tim's side, what we've seen in a communal. So I'm opening it up now in a communal sense. Is America ready for a dark skin, whether man or well, let me do woman. I'm gonna step out. Shirley Chisholm stepped out before any man stepped out. So let me go. Is America ready for a dark-skinned woman to lead this country? Is the question even relevant at this point? Is it that we have passed that stage? Am I foolish to even ask a question? Are we past that stage and we're in a stage now where none of this matters? People are looking now at qualifications, doesn't matter shade of skin or anything like that. What say you, panelists? What say you, YouTube and Facebook? Are we at the point where we are now at the stage where we're looking at people for the content of their character? Natalie.
So
Natalie.
um
What do you think? Where are we?
what you're talking about is called colorism, right?
Yes.
And we understand that is, we can't talk about racism without talking about colorism. That house slave versus that field slave mentality, right? I gotta say that's a really hard question. I just think that some people in society like to talk the talk, but they're not walking the walk, right? So Kamala Harris is a vice president. That's a check off of our box. But to have a woman as a president, that's a whole different conversation. The glass ceiling, right? The glass ceiling that we're still trying to shatter. I feel like a lot of it is an illusion that we're constantly, at women, period, BIPOC, we're constantly trying to the fact that we have to prove ourselves because we have different skin colors, or because we have no, I didn't decide to be born a female. Like, it just happened. Like, I know I'm digressing a little bit, but it's just ridiculous. the first thought that came to my mind when you asked that question is like, this is ridiculous. It's ridiculous that we have to talk about it. It's ridiculous that it's even in question. The perfect world qualifications would be enough, but the reality tells us something completely different. And that's all I got to say about that.
And what is the reality?
The reality is that we still got a long ways to go. We still got a long ways to go. Light skin, dark skin, we still have a long ways to go. The fact that this is a question that we need to bring up is a very big indicator that the glass ceiling isn't shattered yet. It's very much there.
Thank you, Natalie. Tim, is my question irrelevant? And to be honest, folks, I don't know if it's relevant or not. I'm just echoing what I've heard people say. Are we beyond that, or is that something still that we're dealing with as a people, as a race?
Sadly, Pastor, I think your question is still relevant. It's very, very sad and tragic that it is. I think even within the Black community, I think the perception of Stacey Abrams is very different than the perception of Kamala Harris. And I think among whites, when you have white people who are complaining that their beloved Aunt Jemima was taken off of the pancake box or the bottle of pancake syrup, you have people who identify Stacey Abrams, because of her skin tone, with a time in Black history when Black women were domestics, right? When those are the things that Black women did. These are horrible stereotypes, right? Based on color. So sadly, your question is still relevant. I would hope that there would be a day, and I say this as a light-skinned person, right? I can't hide that, obviously. The opening, whether you were light-skinned or dark-skinned, whether you were a house slave or you were in the field, you were a slave. On January 1st, 1863, when President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, everybody was kicked off the plantation, even the people who worked in the house. I'm sure there were lots of light-skinned Black people that got lynched too. And so the sooner that in our own community, we can begin to build some solidarity with one another that transcends this really troubling notion of colorism. Because when white people look at us, do you think that the fact that Barack Obama's mother was a white woman didn't keep them from, the racial slurs. It didn't keep them from any of those things. And so, but yeah, I think there's a real difference between, I think I think Stacey Abrams would have to overcome colorism really, really triumphantly in order to mount even just a successful gubernatorial campaign.
Wow.
In Georgia, let alone if Stacey Abrams ever decides to run for president of the United States, right? There she would face the issues of race, gender, and color.
Mercy.
Right? She would have the triple hurdle to overcome. So sadly, Pastor, I think your question is still relevant. It's terrible that it is.
I was hoping not. Crystal, what say you? You're gonna be the final voice.
I know it's unusual, but I will agree with Tim and say it is definitely still relevant. Especially we still live in a country that thinks about that one drop rule. We still think about it. We still see it playing out in our society in this country. And so I would just agree with what Tim said, in that it's a relevant question, and it's still something that we see taking place. And who are the type of Black women that are easier to get in?
Mm.
I think that's what we're seeing still. So yeah, it is a relevant question.
You know, I thank you all for sharing, because, you know, I've heard this question both in the political sense, and I've even heard it outside of the political sense. Even in entertainment, I've heard this same line of question asked. And so I was debating in my mind, should I ask it? Is it foolish? Have we moved beyond that? But panelists, I thank you so much for sharing. Right now, we are about at the end of this program, and I want to say this. We're in the time now where the entire world, I won't say the entire world, but many of persons in the Christian world who has the Christian faith believe in this Easter season. Many do, some don't. I'm not saying either way what you should believe, what you should not. But I just want you to know that whether or not you believe or you celebrate Easter, I want you to think about this. Christ, when he came, wanted to make significant changes. And he set out to make those changes. He was ridiculed for it. He was turned away by the very people that he came to minister to. They tried to throw him off a cliff. And then finally, when they could not take it anymore, they fabricated a story on him. They put him up on a cross and they killed him. See, sometimes when we want to make change is hard. Regardless what it is, it's changing your hairstyle, changing your beard, changing out your closet, buying a new phone, buying a new car. Change on a general level is hard. Much more when you're fighting to make significant systematic changes. But don't let the fear drive you. Don't sit down in mediocrity. Live and relax in mediocrity. If you want to have change, you have to be willing. If you want to have successful change, positive change, you have to be willing to make the sacrifice. So I don't know if you're on here, I don't know if you're a Christian or not, but if you're looking for a role model to follow, someone who wasn't afraid to put one foot in front of the other, to put his life on the line, to make a change for the human race. If you're looking for that example can be found in the life, in the birth, the life, the death, and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. On behalf of the Hanson Place production, youth production team, I'd like to thank all of you for tuning in this evening. Tim, thank you so very much. Crystal, thank you so very much. Natalie, thank you so very much. I want to invite you all to have a quick word of prayer with me, and then you can go off and enjoy the rest of this beautiful evening. Father in heaven, thank you so much for being with us. I thank you for how far we have come. And I just ask you to be with us as we look forward in the future and continue to swing open the doors that were just barely cracked before. Bless Tim and his ministry. Bless Natalie and her ministry. Bless Crystal and her ministry. And bless every family represented here on this line even now. In Jesus' name, amen. Love you all. We're off next week. So we won't be on next week to do at 4 p.m. So we're taking a break next week, but we'll be on the following week. Once again, from our family to yours, thank you so much for making it Hanson Place SDA Youth Ministries. God bless and have a wonderful rest of your evening. Bye-bye.